this together. Money's tight everywhere. Overworked, I don't care.
As long as we are in this together. Do your dreams
Fade in the night.
keep believing
It's alright. It's alright.
It's alright. We are
In this together.
we are
In this together. Danger worlds in the air. Overwhelmed, I don't care.
as long as we are
In this together.
if change
Is worth the fight.
keep believing
It's alright. It's alright. It's alright. Hold, 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 hold on. Through the dusk till dawn.
side by side
By side,
by side
by side, by side. Carry on. Hearts can break without repair. Overcome, I don't care.
as long as we are
In this,
we are in this we are in this together.
we are in this together. We are in this together. We are in this together. We are in this together. We are in this together. We are in this together. We are in this together. We are in this together.
Trying times is what the world is talking about. We've got confusion all over this globe. Mother against daughter, father against son. The whole thing, ow, has gotten out of hand. Oh, but folks, we wouldn't have to suffer if we had more love for each other. But these are trying times. Oh, yes, they are. Hey, people always talking about man's inhumanity to man. But what are you doing? Please get on up and take a stand. Oh, just pick up your paper, turn on your TV. You see a lot of demonstrations for all kinds of equality. And then, folks, we wouldn't have to suffer if we had more love. But these are trying times. Oh, yes, they are. And if you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. So stand up for peace and harmony. Stand up for ethnic and gender equality. Stand up and teach and fill the children's needs. Stand up and save our democracy. Stand up. Stand up.
Hello everybody, this is Artivism from Cambodia. I am really sorry not to join you of this meeting of the Global Citizen Circle, and thank you Sister Dear for the invitation, and Eleanor and your family. I am still using music to heal myself from what I have seen during the Khmer Rouge time. And music continues to heal me and heal my people, and also Cambodia as a whole, and giving jobs to many generations of artists. So I hope the lullabies will help you also during this time, and have a good meeting with my representatives, my brother, Mr. Pluon, who is the first executive director of Cambodian Living Arts, and to talk about our work using music to heal for social change and social justice. Thank you so much.
Well, welcome everyone. And I want to give a special welcome to students who are joining us today to celebrate International Education Week. I really hope all were online for the start of that opening video. It was so great, and I want to thank the artists Allison Palmer, Elizabeth Ziff, and Amy Ziff of the pop rock group Betty for their oh so apropos song, We Are In This Together, and Marguerite Mariama for another fitting song for the year, Trying Times, and Arnchorn Pond, a longtime Global Citizen Circle friend who told his story of survival of the killing fields of Cambodia as a child to a Global Citizen Circle audience in 1988, and still with us today by way of his video performance of the Cambodian lullaby. Thank you, all of you. For those of you I haven't yet met, my name is Theo Spanos Dunphy, and I'm the president of Global Citizen Circle. I'm so thrilled to welcome all of you from around the globe to this 8th virtual Circle of the Year. After 46 years of convening in-person programs, bringing together people of diverse backgrounds, different ages and opinions, we found ourselves at the end of March faced with a choice: wait out the pandemic or see if virtual programs might work for a while. Well, I can't tell you how happy I am that we chose the latter. Of course, there's nothing like being together face to face, sharing meals and conversation on important topics of the day. But the fact that we're now able to have people from Asia, Africa, Europe, the Middle East, Central and South America, and the US come together today like this has truly given meaning to our name, Global Citizen Circle. Today's circle is a special one, as we've long wanted to have this conversation on art, activism, social change, and healing. And we're profoundly grateful to each of our conversation leaders who've inspired so many through the richness of their art, music, and culture to move forward, take action, and find those things that give meaning to our lives. Before we get started, let me explain the format. We'll hear from Bill Batson, Patrick Gabanda, Marguerite Mariama, Plun Prim, and Anna Shmulewicz, who will begin the conversation. Then we'll move to you who've joined us here today in dialogue. If you have a question or a comment to share, please indicate it in the chat box and we'll call on you to unmute yourself, say your name and location, and briefly ask your question. I want to thank Aaron Flint of Southern New Hampshire University, who'll follow the chat and let us know who'd like to speak. Our circle will close with a few words and music from Betty. And as is our usual practice, you're free to stay on with us after the closing song for more informal conversation if you'd like. So moving ahead, I'd like to introduce our moderator today, Bill Batson. Bill is an artist, a writer, and an activist, as well as a past board member of Global Citizen Circle, and currently a trusted advisor to our organization. He's also the trustee of the Edward Hopper House Museum and Study Center, third vice president of the Nyack branch of the NAACP, and a steering committee member of the People's Panel on Policing in Rockland County, New York. In 2015, Bill chaired a committee that erected a Toni Morrison Society bench by the road monument in Nyack, New York, where he lives with artist and arts educator Marisol Diaz. He's a weekly author and illustrator of the Nyack Sketch Log, which appears every Tuesday on nyacknewsandviews.com since 2011. How lucky we are to have you with us today, Bill, to moderate this circle. So now I'll pass the virtual mic over to you, Bill, to get us started.
This global citizen circle. Activism and art are ancient aspects of human culture. Both pursuits have legions of historians and contemporary practitioners. When you mention either activism or art, everyone knows what you're talking about. But now a new compound word, artivism, has emerged. I'm an artist, and I have been all my life. From crayon to pencil to pen, a stylus is always in my hand or close by. And for almost as long as I can remember, I've been an activist. Since I think the first foray was challenging unhealthy menu options in my middle school cafeteria, because even a 7th grader knows that ketchup is not a vegetable. But I'm also both at once. I am an artivist. Through my essays and illustrations, I seek to activate the parts of the mind that encourage collective action toward constructive change. That's my artivism. Today, you will meet 6 people who will bring meaning to that term, and in so doing, give us some hope. Their genres, life stories, organizations, and interests are varied, but I would suggest they share one central commonality. They are meaning makers. Using their time and talent, they employ the universal language of creativity to produce books, songs, plays, and cultural programs. Other artivists dance, sculpt, podcast, hashtag, engage in social practice, lead protests, moderate panels. Artivists are makers, and what they make is meaning. Through communication, culture, and creativity, they seek to understand, deconstruct, challenge, affirm, celebrate, redirecting humanity and embodying hope. Sometimes by abolishing a threat to humanity. Think artists against apartheid. Sometimes to build us up and give our legs and lungs the power to march on. Think Fannie Lou Hamer singing This Little Light of Mine. Eve Ensler, the author of Vagina Monologue that morphed into the cultural phenomenon of V-Day, describes it this way. This passion has all the ingredients of activism, but it is charged with the wild creation of art. Artivism, where edges are pushed, imagination is freed, and new language emerges all together. Patrick Gabanda describes himself as an undercover artist and well-tempered non-economist. A native of Uganda, he has been passionate about music since his childhood, when he first heard the pipe organ at Namirembe Cathedral in Kampala. As well as being a gifted musician, he is the author of the book, The Creative Wealth of Nations, Can the Arts Advance Development? and he is consulted for the office of the Senior Vice President and Chief Economist at the World Bank. He received a Master's of Arts in Law and Diplomacy at from the Fletcher School at Tufts University, and his Bachelor's and Master's of Music degrees from Juilliard. Marguerite Mariama, who we heard from earlier, is an activist, performing artist, edu-cultural speaker, and consultant. She has spent over 5 decades advancing the intersection of social justice, the arts, history, and education to empower individuals and communities. She's also a dancer, singer, actor, with performances in theater, movies, and TV. Her own journey towards self-healing led to the creation of an empathy-based arts and education theory and methodology, performance pedagogy. Her core philosophy is one of service and activism through the arts and education. Paloon Prim is the executive director of Cambodian Living Arts, which was founded in 1998 by genocide survivor, musician, and longtime Global Citizen Circle friend, Arun Pond. As 90% of Cambodia's artists did not survive the Khmer Rouge regime, Cambodia's artistic heritage was in danger of being lost forever. A visionary cultural entrepreneur, Paloon has spearheaded Cambodian living arts transformation from a grassroots project reviving art forms to a leading cultural organization in Cambodia and the Mekong region. Anna Smulowitz is the director, writer, humanitarian, and daughter of 2 Buchenwald and Auschwitz survivors. Born in a displaced persons camp in Germany, she immigrated to the US as a child. In 1994, Anna was given the Model People's Award by the Timberland Corporation for her play Terezin, Children of the Holocaust, written as a tribute to many relatives who died in the Holocaust. Since 1979, Anna has acted in, directed, or produced over 150 shows and currently runs Smulowitz Productions, which provide contemporary and classical theater experiences for children and adolescents. Betty. And the indie pop trio of Ali Palmer and the sisters Elizabeth and Amy Ziff's passion for music and entertainment is matched by their devotion to the causes they believe in. And thanks to The Glitch, their song All Together Now will be stuck in my head for many, many days. I'm very happy that happened. Betty sings of joy, love, longing, sex, food, heartbreak, and the universal hilarity of human existence. Over their 34-year career, Betty has used music to channel their passion for fairness and equality, performing over 500 concerts to raise money and awareness for women's, LGBTQ, and human rights organizations to help support broad-based agendas for social change. I will now invite each guest to say a few words, and we will get to a portion of our program very soon where we can all have a conversation. But Betty's, whose music you heard at the start of the program, will set our feet dancing and marching with some closing words at the end of the program. But we will have time to engage in conversation. However, I will use my prerogative as the moderator to ask a question to the whole panel I hope they might incorporate into their opening remarks. How can somebody here today use the tools, knowledge, experience, or paradigm you have acquired to make meaning in their lives and for others? But I'd like us to consider everyone who's listening, not only those who identify as an artist, activist, or artivist. How can we all become meaning makers? So, Patrick, take it away.
Yeah, Bill, thank you so much for that kind introduction. And it was great to learn that we have roots from East Africa. We share those roots, both of us. And I want to thank Global Citizen Circle, the people who are putting this together, for inviting us and organizing such a wonderful event, which we badly need in this time. Again, my name is Patrick Kabanda, and I'm from Uganda, although I think it's better to say I'm from Wakanda, because Wakanda is much more inspiring. And also the reason I call myself an undercover artist and well-tempered non-economist is, again, I work with a lot of policymakers who happen to be economists, and the things they say about art and artists are not very flattering for the most part, because as you know, most of the time, many policy areas, the arts are always taken for granted. and not seriously really respected. And I think in terms of social justice, that's something we really need to work on. So if you're an undercover, you can easily hear things and then actually to channel what you hear to create more positive and meaningful change. And also be well-tempered, because sometimes you can't go on to smash windows, but be diplomatically available to really see what you can say or change or do to improve things. And most of the things I talk about are really addressed in my book, which Bill talked about, The Creative Wealth of Nations. But in areas of social justice, I believe that many artists are shortchanged and not compensated well. And that has implications where we are going to look at how artists are compensated and even respecting art. And even from individuals, I think countries themselves, if we start looking at countries like the music we had for Cambodia, the music we may hear from Kenya or Uganda or South Africa or Norway, we are going to see that they're actually wealthy. And this is a very sort of rich tradition of music all over the world. And I think it's important to consider how we use that in economic and social development in meaningful ways. And with that, I'll look forward to that discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Patrick's recent piece in The Satirist has to be read. It will bring you to Wakanda at a moment when we all need to focus on the beauty of that story and the power of it. So our next speaker. We were going to, was it, I'm sorry, is it Anna? I'm sorry, Marguerite, I'm so sorry. Can you unmute yourself, Marguerite?
Okay, can you hear me?
Very good, sorry about that.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Theo, Phoebe, Nadine Hack, and Jerry Dunphy, and all the folks at Global Citizen Circle. It is a pleasure to be involved in this global discussion, especially during Education Week. As an activist artist, my work is education-based, and my focus is Black liberation. But make no mistake, Black liberation leads to human liberation, because here in America, where the race-based caste system claims to be a democracy, no one is free until all are free. My story is a long one, but here's an overview. I've been blessed with many role models and mentors, including the legendary Renaissance woman, Catherine Dunham, who once said, "Go within every day and find the inner strength so that the world will not blow your candle out. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine." For me, art is the vehicle that connects us to that light and to our shared humanity. My art is designed to produce a shift in consciousness and awareness of the innate connection we have to one another. Art helped shape my life, and it helped save me, and activism gave me focus. As a child, performance was an outlet for purging historical and family-induced trauma. I grew up during the 50s and 60s in both the Jim Crow South and segregated Chicago, and our community teemed with the richness and power of African-American culture. I danced, I sang, I played the French horn, and I still do all of those things except playing the French horn. And my dance style and musicianship are informed by classical training in both disciplines, within a bedrock of Africanisms reflective of my heritage. I began protesting social injustice at age 13, and in 1966 in Chicago, alongside thousands of others, I marched against apartheid housing with Dr. King. Activism included work with the Black United Front in Cairo, Illinois, the Black Panther Party's breakfast program in Carbondale, Illinois, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and Trans Africa in New York when I lived there for 30 years. Psychoanalysis, clinical training as a dance movement therapist, and learning an inclusive version of history helped me navigate through the wounds of my childhood. Early on, I was healing myself from the lies of inferiority, the minoring of my selfhood. I had to break myself open to allow the core of the being aspect of my humanity, the light within, to emerge. My empathic depth is the muscle that was born out of pushing through 12 generations of trauma. A professorship in the CUNY system in New York and the practice of lifelong learning have also helped me hone the skills I employ in my work. Here's what I've learned over the course of 50 plus years in the trenches of universities and public schools throughout the country and in the performances here and abroad. The light of who we are really is hidden behind the lies of human separation. That light is the gateway to harmony and love. It's the muscle that allows me to be compassionate and to make the connections with students and others. For me, art making is teaching. In that respect, my 10-minute movie short, Freedom Journey, from which the song you heard earlier, Trying Times, is excerpted, was a love letter to this present moment. I designed it as an education tool to facilitate an honest conversation about anti-Black racism and the fallacy of Black subhumanity. Freedom Journey is United States specific, but many of the challenges we face as a world regarding how we see, and most importantly, how we treat one another, are embedded in the piece. The world must reset. The current state of imbalance is unsustainable. People are hurting and dying, and the planet is screaming and kicking for us to wake up. Change begins with acknowledgement. Black and white bodies in particular hold unacknowledged trauma that shapes our behavior towards one another. It's an energy force felt and often expressed in our daily interactions, including macro and micro aggressions. Performance pedagogy, my arts integration curriculum-based methodology and theory, undergirds multimedia interactive seminars, classes, workshops, and presentations and performances that address these challenges. We can all become meaning makers by learning and telling the truth. We cannot change what we do not acknowledge, and oftentimes truth is painful, but the other side of truth is freedom. We begin with the truth of history. That history is not an ideology, it is fact. As journalist Bill Moyer, in a recent interview referencing white denial of inhumane historical brutalities and their relationship to today's cruelties, said the following, and I quote, "Truth is the oxygen in the air of democracy. We need to face the truth like grown-ups and deal with what we all see around us. We may lose our last chance," end of quote. The joy in the social protests we saw all over the world this summer, the jubilation in the streets over the toppling of a wannabe dictator this month, reflects an elevation of consciousness. The signs of transcendence and transformation are all around us. Truth is our foundation. Let's do the work, everybody. Thank you, Bill. Pass the baton.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marguerite. So now we'll, two more of our presenters, and then we'll begin our discussion. Paloon, just unmute yourself. There you go.
Kim Liep Suo, as we would say in Cambodia. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, everyone from the Global Citizen Circle. I just want to wave in because I saw, like, I think two of my staff who's in Cambodia right now who has been inspired by wanted to learn about this this talk and this circle. So here we are, almost 11 p.m. at night, but they still
Chris, I'm on a call right now.
Awake,
I'm going to be off at 12:30. Hold on everything till I call in.
Yeah, no problem, man. I just want to make sure.
Bill, you have to mute yourself. Oh, is it okay? So I just want to say thanks to them also to be part of this, because I think it's really interesting to see the circle of international people involved in believing in the work of arts and culture from wherever you are around the world. So just want to quickly introduce myself. So my name is Pleun. I am a Cambodian. I think, like you've seen our founder of Cambodian Living Arts, Arn Chon Porn. I was born during the genocide in 1976, so right under this oppressing regime who targeted artists and intellectuals. I've been lucky enough that I was young enough to not have suffer the trauma of almost like a child or a teenager or an adult understanding what was going on. And so I would say that the passion that I want to share in my work is what we have done here for the past 2 decades in Cambodia. So from trying to revive the traditions and the only 10% of survivor artists who were able to stay alive and to live after the genocide, but then also to help them passing on their oral traditions. But I think the joy of the work that I'm doing today is also working with this young generation of artists. And I would say, I wouldn't call them yet activists, but I would say that what we're trying to push them is to express and create in the context of Cambodia today and the world. So I'm really proud and really happy to be part of this work. I'm not calling myself, definitely not calling myself artist, but my work is to facilitate the work of all these amazing artists that I work with every day. So I think I'm blessed enough to be able to facilitate, to create the right environment for them to create their work so that we can help changing the course of our world for a better world. So thank you.
Plune, I'm so sorry about that rude interruption. I apologize. I thought I muted myself. So our last speaker before we join in discussion will be Anna Smulowitz. Theo, can you unmute her? There we go.
Can you hear me?
Absolutely.
Hello.
And I won't interrupt you.
Okay, I'm so honored to be part of this program today, Global Citizen Circle. Thank you so much for inviting me. You told my story in brief, that I was born in a DP camp in Germany after the Holocaust, where my parents were and met in Buchenwald, and my mother was liberated from Auschwitz. And when I was little, I remember looking across the table and seeing the blue numbers on their arms. And at first, as a child, they didn't tell me what happened or why they had these numbers imprinted. My father would say, "It's my phone number, I don't want to forget it." And I knew something horrible had happened to them because of their staring out into a distance, and because we didn't have any immediate family near us. I didn't know what happened to our grandparents or aunts, uncles, cousins, and eventually I found out. And as I grew up, I have this promise I made to myself that one day I would tell their story, write something, some way remember them. And the opportunity came when I became a theater artist. I studied it in college and became a teacher, professor of acting and playwriting. And eventually I became a playwright of many social justice plays about children labor in factories early in New England, plays about Hiroshima, play about a girl named Sadaka who survives Hiroshima. And my student acted in these plays and studied these times in history and became artists and activists because they were committed to changing the world through art. The play that I wrote 50 years ago was entitled To Raising Children of the Holocaust, and it was about 6 of the 16,000 children that entered Theresienstadt between 1942 and 44, and only 100 survived. Those children in Theresienstadt knew that creating art, writing poetry, sending letters to those who would live after would be a way of them being remembered and their lives having meaning. And so one day, as I was walking, thinking about this play I needed to write and how to approach it, I see a sign that says Children's Art from the Holocaust in a gallery, and I go in and I see these poems and pictures and written on garbage bags and odd pieces of paper, and I read one that says, if you should find this, please tell someone what happened to us, remember us. Chaim Landau, age 14. He died in Auschwitz in 1943. So I sat down in the gallery and I began to write it. And today it's in its 50th year of being performed in schools around the country, including in Auschwitz, Cuba, and in Terezin itself for a few of the 100 survivors and their families. So we have done this work to remember the children of Terezin, and we continue to do it now virtually in the schools. And we have a new film that we've made that is being sent to the schools as well. And then we have talkbacks, and the children lead these talkbacks and talk about the meaning of the play and the history and how it affects hate crimes today, prejudice, bullying, and how we can make a difference in those schools, in our communities, and in the world. And that is what I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. Thank you to all the panelists. There's so much here, and a wonderful group that are from around the world and on our call. So if you have a question, if you'd like to be recognized, please let us know in the chat, and you can direct your question to any one of our discussion leaders. Phoebe, has anybody indicated in the chat that they have a question?
Yes, we have a question for Marguerite. I think, Aaron, can you see who that one is from?
Sure. One moment, I'm checking here.
It's from Tiffany McPherson. Tiffany, would you like to unmute yourself and ask Marguerite your question?
Maybe Tiffany, tell us where you're calling, where you at on the Zoom call. Did she write her question, Phoebe? Can you read it?
I'm happy to read it out, Tiffany. If you are able, if you jump back in, please feel free to ask. Are you there?
I see.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, that's wonderful, Tiffany. We'd love you to pose your question directly to Marguerite. Are you happy to?
Yes.
Great.
All right.
Where are you, Tiffany?
I'm here from Chicago.
Yay.
So my question is, Dr. Marguerite Mariama, your performance was amazing. Can you tell us more about your theory and methodology, performance,
pedagogy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's curriculum based. It's an arts integration theory and methodology that uses performance as an education and self-development and evaluation tool. The performing arts, that is music, dance, theater arts, and arts therapies, along with educational psychology, are integrated with traditional academic subjects with the intention of teaching through performance. It's been honed for over 40 years in the social science and education fields in both metropolitan New York and Chicago. And it really serves to enlighten audiences with fact-based, contextualized, interactive, experiential, living history content. It's designed to engage, to challenge, to inspire participants. And the programs give voice to those who are often missing, ignored or missing from the American historical landscape. Does that help?
Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
So we have a question from Khalid Green from Brooklyn. The question is to the panel, so I will ask it and let the panelist who wants to step forward, and if so, more than one. What can we do to help change the trajectory of our world?
That's a big question. Who wants to go first? I'll take it. I think we have to begin with education. Basically, we need to read books that inform us about the privileges of whiteness, for example. We need to read history books that tell the full truth of our global history, especially American history, because obviously that's where I am right now. We need to read books and articles on the lives of Black people and Indigenous people and persons of color. We need to be open to discussions and deep conversations with people who don't look like ourselves. And we need to take that information, and I think we need to share it with our family and friends and our networks, because we then can spread the truth to broader swaths of people when we do that. So we have to take responsibility by educating ourselves.
Well, that was
anybody else?
It was a big question, but it was handled very deftly. And I have a question for Plune, to the extent that I'm changing the question a little bit, but how do the arts change the trajectory of Cambodian life? Because I know that you said that the artists were targeted by the Khmer Rouge. So obviously they were trying to achieve something by eliminating the arts. What have you been able to achieve by reintroducing the arts?
Thank you, Bill, for the question. I think just to maybe set the context of Cambodia and I would say maybe share the experience of Cambodia over the last 4 decades is what we have seen right in the refugee camp that were growing next to the conflict that was happening in Cambodia. So on the border of Thailand, where refugees were starting to flee Cambodia, and I was among them at the age of 3, hold by my father through the jungle and everything, and settling ourselves in those refugee camps. What had happened in the refugee camp is, despite kind of having no food, no shelter, and UNHCR helping to settle the refugee, women in the refugee camp gather and started to bring kids together. And what they did is to start to recreate dance class, music class in those refugee camps. And you would wonder, like, why are they doing that? And the reason, it was simply for them to, first of all, keep their identity as Cambodian alive, even in this context of being in the refugee camp in another country. And at the same time, I think for the young people that were part of, like, suddenly having to, learning those tradition and those dance is for them also to be able to be out of the context that they're living in, like no shelter, not enough food, but to be able to imagine a future that they were recreating in their imaginations and learning these dance and these music. So this is, to answer your question, Bill, this was the beginning of the process of bringing back identity, bringing back inspirations. I would love to say, like, giving back dignity to people through the arts. And so over the course of the last 4 decades, and the work that we have been doing was been like finding these master and just asking them, and I think Margaret, you talk about education. We didn't have time to set up like curriculum and teacher training. So what we just asked those masters, like, in your traditional way, start to teach, start to just in your oral traditional way, start to gather these kids under your roof, under your home, and transmitting this oral tradition. So fast forward 2 decades after that is what we see now, and now we can speak about arts education. Now we can speak about, you know, having young people expressing contemporary work. Now we can see how it had changed the course of Cambodia. I hope, I would say, Bill, is for the best, because now we have a beginning of a generation of artists who express what they see, what they feel, challenge you know, the reality that they're living in, and imagine a world that we will be living in, I hope, in the next generations.
Well, this next question deals with another end of the spectrum. We go from bottom up, from children into refugee camps, to the foreign minister of New Zealand, Mahuta, who wears Maori art on her face. The question is, are there any other politicians around the world that you believe that practice Artivism as their very presence as leaders? And I just want to remember, Jerry introduced me once to Kenneth Kaunda, the president of Malawi, who would give rock concerts. He would do guitar solos as part of his
Zimbabwe.
Zambia. So sorry, Kenneth Kaunda, president of Zambia, would do guitar solos at his rallies. So, are there any world leaders that you can think of that practice Artivism? And that could be to anybody.
Hi, can I elaborate on my question, please?
Oh, please.
That would be, they don't have to be the president or prime minister. I'm thinking, like, if Biden were to appoint Patrick or Marguerite Mariama as our Secretary of State, something like that. I guess what I'm asking, I'm trying to suggest that diversity actually can be a mechanism for propelling Artivism. And the example being the Prime Minister of New Zealand, this wonderful woman who's managed to contain COVID-19 in her country, deliberately chose a Maori leader as Secretary of State or Foreign Minister. I mean, what a beautiful thing.
That's right. Well, I know that, go ahead, Nadine.
Catherine, while you're still on, maybe you could share a little bit about Rubia and what's happening in Afghanistan.
Well, thank you, Nadine, for your question. I'm actually working more in Mali, in West Africa, and I'm working with traditional artists who make bogolan or mud cloth. And I guess the analogy would be the bogolan is a mechanism for communicating with the outside world. So they sell their artwork, which is actually based upon a language, and they sell it to Europeans and Americans, and it tells their story. And most recently, we're creating these masks, and each mask has a bogolan symbol, which represents a traditional Malian value, like family, courage, and it's I'm in this network called Cultural Diplomacy Network, and it's a mechanism for cultural diplomacy because it's person to person. So I'm wearing a mask with a Malian symbol on it, which means courage, and it represents like a warrior's belt. So that can give me some courage to get through this hard time. I mean, I'm not having a hard time. I'm one of the lucky ones. But anyway, thank you for asking, Nadine.
Thank you. Cultural diplomacy is a powerful concept, and I think it's a little bit close to what Patrick is getting at in his book, Creative Wealth of Nations, or at least, creativity as a currency and as a way of understanding the wealth of countries. So in your book, Patrick, in the chapter, The Unsettled Question of Women in the Performing Arts, you ask a question, and I'd like for you to answer it. You say that performing arts are riven with gender divides. Why does this matter for development? And I thought you could share that, your thoughts on that.
Yes, I actually was thinking through all these questions which have been asked, and going back to our East African roots, I remembered Kalastas Juma, the only, I think, African professor I've ever had since I came to the United States. He unfortunately passed away a few years ago. But whenever they asked a hard question, it would be like, oh, maybe the person who's asking that question has an answer. So I wanted to ask if Khalid has an answer to his question, and then I will go on to elaborate on what I think. But I don't want to feel like I'm substating either his question or his question, but to answer your question directly, I really believe, actually, I grew up in an era where countries were always not called it, they were called she. So for example, if you address the United States, you will say that the United States is doing this and she has voted to do this and she has. And my mother would explain to me that the reason is because mothers are the ones who bring nations together and things like that. And I don't want to say this because of my own experience being raised by my mother, but I think that research has shown that if women are really pulled behind, everyone suffers. And that's why I'm a big fan of Muhammad Yunus, who I talk about in that book. He realized that if you give men the resources, the money to do things or pay school fees, most of that money is very much wasted or used for drinking clubs or things like that. But if you give the money to women, you are more likely to actually get to the taproot of a problem. And that's why investing in women is very powerful. And also, I believe that if you are going to be able to get rid of the gender issues we are facing, you cannot look at the situation of women as just some kind of decoration. You appoint a vice president or even president of someone, and to use that as window dressing. We have to have systematic changes in how women are paid. Many women are not really compensated very fairly, and we need to get into the root of that problem. And also, actually, another hero of mine, Amartya Sen, suggests that actually, because of a women's role in raising children or raising nations, if we don't invest in women, we all end up losing. In that, for example, if you want to have a child go to school, but now the wife doesn't know how to log on Zoom or doesn't know how to deal with password because they were deprived of education, then everyone is actually losing. But another very interesting concept which I bring up, I have a colleague of mine, a friend from church, happens to be from another African country. He said he wanted to learn typing, but they would not allow him to take typing because the thing was, oh, women are the ones who take typing lessons. As a man, you don't do typing. Now his work involves a lot of typing. So guess what? Because of that situation that men don't do those kinds of things, his productivity level is quite low now because he can't type as fast as he could. And this is not good for everybody. So I think that removing these barriers, whether it's in creative work or in other things, actually end up benefiting everyone. So I think that takes a stab on that question, I hope.
And I just want to tag on to that, Patrick, because here in America, within the Black community, 75% of households are female-led in the Black community, and that tells you all you need to know. If that's the truth, then those women need as much support as possible. And so it behooves us to pay a lot more attention to their plight. Whatever their economic, socioeconomic, and health needs are, they need to be addressed.
So we're joined on this call by Ambassador Harriet Elam-Thomas. And yes. I would like to ask her if she has any thoughts or if she would like to address a question to any of our panelists. If we could unmute her.
I'm delighted. I'm over the moon because I see so many people I've known over the years. Jerry, whom I've known since the New England Circle, and sat next to him and Bishop Tutu back in the 70s in Boston. but I also am moved by the focus on cultural diplomacy. For 42 years, I was in the diplomatic service, and another 17 of teaching here at the University of Central Florida. And we often forget the role of arts in bridging gaps across cultures. In every embassy, Greece, Turkey, Cyprus, Senegal, Mali, the Ivory Coast, France, back to Senegal as the ambassador, I saw the role of arts bringing disparate parties together at a negotiating table. That would not have happened. The Iran agreement, all of the agreements that we hear so much about in the international arena are a result of people communicating across political lines. They might never have done that if they hadn't gone to a reception at the ambassador's residence or at a concert hall and shared something that it is universal, as Marguerite has often said. You do not need a translator to explain a language, a music, or an artwork. And that was my goal throughout my time early on in the career service, and I still find that extremely important now. I am so encouraged that there may be a possibility that the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs at the State Department will be headed by someone who has a senior advisor named Marguerite Mariama Moore at her or his right hand. I kid you not. I've heard so much about the works. Anna Shmulevitz, I've heard of your work even though we've not met. I would put all of those who are part and parcel. I have a student from Cambodia who has stayed in touch with me because his life story touched my heart for 5 years since he's left this university. And he's a little younger than you are, Fanon, but the story still resonates. So all I would like to say is to continue your work. I'm so happy that I've reconnected with Jerry and all the members of the original New England Circle that is now a global circle. And I'm afraid I can't really retire because your work is what is needed sorely today. Thank you.
That's what I'm talking about. So I would like, Ayana had a question for Anna, but the way these threads work, the information just flies past like a ticker tape, and if you don't make a note, you lose it. So can somebody unmute Ayana, and can she direct her question to Anna? She replied awesome to my note. She's next. So
Ayana is unmuted. Hi, Ayana, you are unmuted. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
I'm here.
Go ahead.
What was the question?
Maybe she can type it. I can't hear. I think, well, I think she asked about where you draw your work from. Is it entirely from the Holocaust, or are there or the pieces that you've written? Are there other sources of your?
I think my plays are about social justice, and Native Americans, marginalized people everywhere. My plays from the very beginning have been some way to engage young people to make change, because their voices are very powerful and true. And it seems like in the talkbacks at school that the kids in the audience and the teachers would like to hear less from me and more from my students. There's a hunger for understanding where young people live in their hearts and their minds. And you know, they have this extraordinary triumph of spirit and will. And they believe what they do in art and what they say actually matters. And they say it boldly and authentically and truthfully. And those are the voices I work with and cultivate through these stories, through history, about injustice. And there's quite a number of them, as we know. And so the most recent, I've worked with the local labor injustices of children in the early 1900s, right here in New England. And there's a great history here in the Lawrence factories of children as young as 4 who worked 12-hour days. And so we wrote a play about that together. We improv'd it, we researched it, and it became a play called Milliard Mass, which we performed several times and in the schools. And, you know, we don't know our history very well. And if we knew it and understood it, we could connect it to what we're going through today. And, you know, the statement, if you don't learn from history, you're condemned to repeat it. And so that is what we base as a theater company, what we base our work on. I've been an educator for 52 years, theater educator. But in the last 10 years, I've focused solely on working through plays on the Holocaust, Native American stories, early New England factory children, worker stories, but the stories all center around the injustices towards children and how they are the fodder for crimes against humanity. And that is what I'm most intrigued with and I feel is most powerful and effective, especially from the mouths of babes. People seem to be able to hear it and trust that the stories are true.
Anna, we have another question for you from Judith Thompson.
Oh, hi, Judith.
Hi, Anna. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
So glad you're on this. I have a question for you, which is that I'm aware of something other people are not, which is that for a period of time, you engaged in dialogue with former Nazis, descendants of the Third Reich, through One by One, and we had Rosalie Jarrett on our last call for those who recall that. And I know that that had a deep impact on you personally. I'm curious to know if that dialogue has impacted the way you think about your art and your offerings in any way whatsoever.
Judith, I think you know, because we were in Germany together, that I was terrified and horrified to be there at all. I felt I was betraying my parents, my grandparents, and so forth, to be on what my mother used to call the bloody soil. And I went. Thank God I went, and I met them, and I heard their stories one at a time. And where everyone was linked as a mass of the German Nazis, they became, you know, one name at a time. People I would meet, become very close to, and hear their story and care that they had a story. And I felt so heard and recognized and acknowledged by them. And it wasn't for the intention of apology, which would have been cheap forgiveness. It was with the intention of truly opening our own hearts and spirits to the trials of all humanity and understanding where we connect and how we connect and how that was the seed of peacemaking. That's what I learned in Germany from descendants of the Third Reich, whose fathers were horrible murderers, genocide, responsible for the genocide. And yet, we embraced, we ate together, we chatted for days, and we're still in connection 18 years later. It's an extraordinary journey, and it led me to my own spirituality, to my own understanding of my own need to free myself from the resentment and the hate and the fear of the other. That's what that taught me.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
I have a question here from Ralph Moore to Marguerite. As the universal language, how does music inform your work?
Well, my introduction to African American music, which is blues and jazz, or America's classical music, which is blues and jazz, started as a child, listening to blues in my great aunt's cafe by day and juke joint at night in our paternal home in Thomaston, Georgia. And then in Chicago, I was surrounded by jazz and rhythm and blues and gospel music my parents and grandparents played in our segregated housing complex in Princeton Park in Chicago. During the summer holidays, music blared from the hi-fis or the high fidelity music equipment that's every family seemed to own. Music really was an elixir, and our connection to a shared culture. It told our stories. And in Chicago, which was considered to be an up South, because that term refers to the huge influx of Southerners who fled to Chicago during the Great Migration, the musical culture really helped to uplift us through the limitations of beyond the limitations of the apartheid state we lived in. My understanding of Black Power began as an appreciation for Black culture and Black music in particular. So that's where it began. And I see culture and Black music in particular as sort of a cultural, spiritual power tool that drives creativity and innovation. And so in my workshops and presentations, I tell this history because it's important. The development of blues and jazz follows the chronology of America's rise as a result of 250 years of free labor. So work songs, for example, are the progenitors of the structured blues songs we know today. And as enslaved people toiled in the forced labor camps, also known as plantations, in debilitating heat under malicious cruelty, they moaned, they hummed, they hollered, they harmonized, they shouted, they belted, and they sang the songs to get them through the next minute, the next hour, the next day. And that's the underbelly of what we now call America's classical music. And it's a music that has influenced the world. Popular music, popular culture is rife with that music. And it comes from the people who created African-American musical culture. It's a commodity now, and it's made a lot of money for a lot of people. For example, blues music influenced spirituals, jazz, gospel, country and western, rhythm and blues, rock and roll, show tunes, jazz, fusion, rap, hip hop, and a whole lot of other musical forms. So my programs and performances are powered by the history of that music.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Marguerite. So I want to just transition to the next part of what we're going to do. We're going to hear from Ali and Elizabeth and Amy. They'll introduce a piece of music that'll close us out, and then we will linger as we would at a dinner party when the conversation just can't be contained by the amount of time or the size of the table. But I just hope that you have a similar experience with this. If this is your first circle, or even if this is a circle that if you've been to several, I always have the same experience that I feel like, I never knew my family was so vast. And that I make lifelong friends. There are people in my life that I will know forever that are all over the world that I met in Boston through the circle. And now that with this technology and with Nadine and Jerry in Switzerland, it's always been global, but if it's possible, it's even more global now. And I'm just reminded of that expression or the observation from Mother Teresa, that the mistake that we make, the biggest mistake that we make, is that we draw the circle of our family too small.
Yeah.
Well,
it's true.
Our circle, we draw the circle globally, and it really is a global circle. And I'd like to thank everybody for being a part of this today. As Bill Hart used to say, in Boston, you are now members of the Global Citizen Circle. So I hope you'll continue to share ideas with us and participate in future panels and share it with your friends. And I hope you'll get as much as we all will from this performance, another performance by Betty, but I also hope that you'll join us afterwards to continue informally the conversation as a kind of after party. So let's hear once again from a little bit of a few words from Ali, and there's the sisters Elizabeth and Amy Zeff, Ali Palmer, Elizabeth and Amy Zeff, and then one more piece from Betty.
Thank you so much, Bill. I have to tell you, this whole time I've been scribbling, taking so many notes. This conversation has been fantastic. Thank you, Theo, for inviting us to be part of this. Thank you to our dear friends Nadine Hack and Jerry for introducing us to Global Citizen Circle in the first place. And thank you everyone here for your decades of work dedicated to bringing people together. I'm Ali Palmer, with my brilliant bandmates Elizabeth, wave Elizabeth, or snap your fingers so you get to be like the big picture there, and Amy. We're here in New York City, and for the past 34 years, our band Betty has dedicated our lives to bringing people together as well. From the first audition when we met, the three of us shared a fierce passion for creating and performing songs and stories, as well as a deep commitment to fairness, to equity and inclusion from the very, very beginning. And using the joyful collaboration of music, the best of our band's performances create the kind of self and group confidence that doesn't need to oppress others. It's there to help people be empowered and thrive. Betty has played on 5 continents since our very first protest concert in the Reagan 80s. And under the Obama administration, just as Ambassador Harriet Elam-Thomas was saying, we did the most important cultural work I can think of, because during the Obama administration, Betty became arts and culture envoys for the US Department of State, and we traveled even farther. We were fortunate to walk in a pride parade in the Balkan states and be pelted by tomatoes and bottles and screaming faces along the sides of the street who were talking about the aberration that homosexuality was, and to be able to leave there. You know what I mean? We weren't part of the people that had to then get on the subway and live in that area. We left. So we left, and we knew that we had to keep telling those stories. We had to keep sharing what we saw around the world as these arts envoys. And just like you, Ambassador, Madam Ambassador, we hope also that there's going to be more cultural engagement around the world for artists as there was before. 5 years ago, our dear friend and mentor, Gloria Steinem, all praise to Gloria Steinem, suggested that we form a nonprofit to deepen our work in marginalized communities. And so we created the Betty Effect, which is a nonprofit organization that uses music and performance techniques to grow communication, connection, and self-advocacy among women and girls, LGBTQ+ communities, and creative people everywhere, which all human beings are. Once you get the fear and the hate out of the way, what we teach in our workshops is always that all human beings are creative. We all have access to our own unique stories. And all we need is to be able to support each other and people to create the opportunity for our unique voices to rise. Through the BettyEffect.org, that's something that we do, and we're honored for our voices to do that. Amy, Elizabeth, did you want to say anything else?
I wanted to say, first of all, humbled to be in the presence of all of you wonderful people, and what a great panel, Marguerite and Anna, Patrick, and thank you to everyone. And everybody here is so intense, and you can just go by every little square and see that everybody's so interested, and you know, it feels great to be a part of this circle. And I feel like our circle of Betty, that's what we've been doing our entire career. We've just been expanding our circle. We used to call it the web before it became the wide world web. So that's how long we've been together. But because Amy and I are sisters and Allison's our best friend, it just feels like we've stepped into another family with you. And so a part of this huge global family that we've been creating by touring the world for over 30 years. And we're just happy to be, I'm happy, and all of us are happy to be a part of this wonderful circle of arts activism. What did you say it was, Bill?
Artivists.
And we're friends with Yvonne and have done work with her in V-Day since the beginning. And so we're going to tell her about this and that you quoted her. So that's exciting. But Big ups and love to everybody. Amy?
Great. I've really enjoyed this and I'm really excited to be part of it. And I don't know what else I can add except for to all the other artisans and artists and activists during this challenging time. There's no greater thing than to participate in something like this, and you realize that you might not be able to be performing in person or with an audience, but you're still reaching and getting fed and nurturing and getting a message out there. So it's really important.
I agree with that 100%, especially Flynn, for what you said about the fact that the first people that were taken away were the artists and the intellectuals. The first thing they do is censor. So the power in this group is really, it's inspiring. And so we want to leave you with a song that we actually wrote because of the dictator that came into, or I will say the wannabe dictator that came into America, even though I know that this is a nonpartisan event. We will say that there was someone who had nefarious plans for the country that we did not share. And so we wrote this song to say that we all needed to do something about it and never stop speaking up, just like everybody here, including our friend Adrian Johnson there in London. Just keep speaking up. We thank you all. So here's our song.
Peace.
Up, get up, dance up, get up, sing up, get up, change everything. Up, get up, dance up, get up, sing up, get up, change everything. Silence must stop, violence must end, broken body and spirit will rise again. Strength in numbers, take a stand, right the wrongs, don't ask a man. If one woman hurts, if one woman cries, if one man bleeds, rise, rise. Up, get up, dance up, get up, sing up, get up, change everything. Up, dance up, get up, sing up, get up, change everything. Brothers, sisters, women, girls, the time is now to change the world. No story forgotten, no soul erased, no promise left empty, we're taking our place. If one woman hurts, if one woman cries, if one man bleeds, rise, rise. What time is it? Get up, get up, get up, get up. What time is it? Get up, get up, get up, get up. What time is it? Time to rise 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 up. Rise, rise. If one woman hurts, one woman. If one woman cries, one woman. If one man bleeds, rise, rise. Up, get up, dance up, get up, sing up, get up, change everything. Up, get up, dance up, get up, sing up, get up, change everything. What time is it? Time to rise up.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
You unmute everybody so we
Yeah.
can hear the applause. It's a nice sound. 80 people clapping.
Thank you.
Yes.
Awesome.
Very nice.
Yeah. Rise up. Indeed.
Theo
Stand
and
up.
Phoebe, thank you so much. Bravo.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to
Great
thank everybody who was here today, who took part in this conversation, to our conversation leaders. It was inspiring, as people have been commenting in the chat. Really, it's been an uplifting conversation, and the music and the talk about arts and culture. We all needed this today, so thank you so much. I welcome you to stay, anybody who'd like to stay on longer. This concludes the formal part of our program, but as always, we're happy to chat with anyone as you would like to stay on any longer. So please have a wonderful, for those of you celebrating Thanksgiving, that's coming up next week. And I want to say first, I'm very thankful to all of you for being here today.
Eleanor has her hand up.
Hello, everyone. And I just wanted to add a memory. Thank you so much, Ambassador Elam, for what you brought back to all of us, and that was the continuity of the story and the growing of the family. You mentioned New England Circle, and coincidentally, we were named Global Citizen Circle back in South Africa when we brought a delegation to honor Gracia Michel for her work through the UN with child soldiers. And I felt it was relevant to share a couple of moments during that amazing program, because when we honored her, she thanked us and then turned around to all 200 of probably the most diverse gathering of people in South Africa at that time, 1998. And she said, if you think I'm going to present a speech right now, you're very wrong. I am going to turn the question to you, because the question had been, what about the children? And she said, I ask you, why do we not honor the children? Why? And the entire group gathered, and one young teacher stood and said, I teach third grade, and I think the reason the children don't matter is they take time, and we don't have time. People with power, adults are rushing. We don't give time. After that powerful statement, Arn Chorn Pond stood up in that gathering and said, my dear Gracia, I play my flute for you tonight because of the work and the voice you have given to child soldiers. He said, I play it for all the children. I play it in honor of all those who will take time for children. And he played a lullaby similar to the one that opened the program this morning. It is such a privilege to be with all of you who take the time. And I want you to know that Global Citizen Circle is just what it says it is. It's an ever-growing family. Did you hear that little baby make his or her voice heard while somebody was commenting a little earlier? That's what it's all about. So here's to the children, and may whatever we do in whatever corner of the world we are, that is going to change the trajectory, as Patrick so thoughtfully said. Thank you very much for being with us.
And thank you, Sailor, for that.
That was Sailor.
That was Sailor.
Good. I have one more observation. I just learned from Adrian that Allie is the daughter of the late Ambassador Ron Palmer, who was one of my idols, as well as the late Ambassador Edward Perkins, who, as many of you know, died less than a week ago, November 7th, and he was the first Black U.S. ambassador to South Africa. A magnificent man who stood tall, standing next to Pick Bolter, who didn't want him to be there. Jesse Jackson didn't want him to go to South Africa. Why would you accept Ronald Reagan's invitation to be the first Black ambassador? And yet he laid the groundwork for the ending of apartheid. We'll miss him, and we miss Ron Palmer. And I see Allie may not be with us now, but
I'm here.
You're there.
Dad, and I'm here.
Oh, I'm delighted to see you. You have a wonderful legacy to uphold. I visited him when he was ambassador to Togo. And Patrick, when did you finish Fletcher? You're younger than I am. A lot.
2013.
Well, try 1979, 80.
But
yes, you are a lot younger.
That was after 10 years of music education. I took 10 years and I went back. So
bravo.
It's not as bad as
No, I didn't go to Fletcher till I was 38, so that was a long time too. But thank you, Theo. Yes.
Ambassador, you're gonna love this. I sent a link to Patrick's book and his column on the satirist to Ambassador Patrick Gaspard.
Oh my.
The last ambassador to South Africa. I mean, the Obama's ambassador to South Africa.
Yes.
If I get, I'd love to get them together, because I think the work he's doing right now, the work that he did at the World Bank, I think would be welcomed in the open society.
I'm sure it would be.
Where Patrick is now. So.
Yeah. All right. I'll tell you that I did do a memoir, and it's called Diversifying Diplomacy. What a keen title these days. The State Department needs all the help it can get, and it's available on Amazon. And it's almost 2 years old. We launched it at Dakar House in Washington. When was that, Venetia? 2017? No, December 5th, 2017. It was a year before Mrs. Obama's book came out, thank goodness.
And it's a great read. It's a great read. It is a great read. It absolutely is.
Thank you,
I'm putting it up in the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, my journey from Roxbury to Dakar. It's going up in the
Thank you.
And if Chico is still here, I believe he wanted to play something for us.
Yes. Can we just before Chico goes, I saw that Sophia Bandele has
Sophia.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, Sophia.
Okay, hi. I just wanted to thank my friend Marguerite for inviting me to this group. I'd never heard of it, but I'm really pleased to be here, and I've enjoyed all the speakers. I was just wondering if I could have a sit down with the son of a KKK. You know what I mean? So I really appreciate, was it Anna? Being able to do that. I don't know if I could sit down with the son of people who lynched my foreparents. I don't know, but it's something to think about. But mainly, I wanted to
have unwittingly.
Yeah, I'm sure I have. Anytime you go to
Davis has done that
in Washington and every place, everybody who holds office. But I really wanted to thank Patrick, and I'm going to buy your book, Patrick. But I wanted to just comment about something because it's been on my mind lately when you talk about leaders and culture. The great Captain Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso, was such a person. And during his very, very short time, he made an indelible impact on the world and also on many, many people here. I didn't hear him when he came to Harlem, but I do know that he talked about the fact that the people in his cabinet had to wear a certain garment that was woven by the people. As a sense of cultural pride, not ties, suits and ties, but this cultural connection to the people. So they had to wear that. But beyond that, he was such an enlightened person when it came to women. So when I was working at City University, I think it was maybe, he was in office 1983 to 87. And in 85, he sent his ambassador of education to our college. Now, we were just astonished. We said, you mean this sister is the ambassador of education for a country? That was unheard of for us. And so I wanted to just lift up Thomas Sankara, the beautiful, beautiful person assassinated with the help of the CIA, and what he stood for in terms of culture, cultural, indigenous culture, and the rights of women, Thomas Sankara.
Mm-hmm.
And if I may add on that, something I said, and I think I assumed that I think people will pick it up. The reason why there's that title is called, the chapter which Bill was asking about is called the unanswered question of women, unsettled question of women in the performing arts. I believe that if the arts continue to marginalize women, meaning that normalizing things, we've seen some of our behavior now in the White House and other high places, in that the arts also have this kind of elevated pillput, that if you see movies depicting women as objects, which has been a very big question. You see this in a lot, even actually in classical music. There's an article, Beethoven is turning 250 years soon. And there was an article which came out saying that the woman who made Beethoven's piano, I've never heard of that woman, yet I've studied a lot of music, but who knew there was this woman who was actually one responsible for making or maintaining Beethoven's pianos? Because this history is always erased, in that the arts cannot, we cannot basically try to talk about this when the cultural forces which have the arts and movies and music are actually doing the opposite. That's why you really need a projection of the arts to be more on the positive side of trying to project women's contribution. You know, even I think Mendelssohn, even Mozart, and I think others, their sisters sometimes wrote their music, but you don't get to hear this. You may talk of Mendelssohn, I know for that for sure, I talk about in the book. Some of the pieces were actually penned by his sister, but they will never be published. So Mendelssohn had to go put on his sign. So this is basically a huge problem which we have to confront, and I think we are making inroads. But I think that the arts indeed do have, we can do more of using the arts to promote, I think, gender equality, using the forces we have in creative work and the arts in general.
And I want to just add something to that, Patrick, because you touched on something that is really extremely important, especially within the Black community. Some of the negative stereotypes and representations we see in popular culture are being internalized as self-truth. And it's really shaping behavior in a way that is negative. And I want to tie back to Sophia Bandelli, who I know from, well, she's my dear friend, but I know her from my work in the CUNY system. She was the director of the women's program at Medgar Evers College. And the work that we did there was transformational because we were dealing with adult learners for the most part whose lives were trauma-based. And so we had to help them, help usher them through that trauma. And some of it, a lot of it had to do with socioeconomics, but also abuse, sexual and physical abuse. And Sophia, would you like to talk a little bit more about that work? Because it was really, really monumental. I know you're retired now.
No, but well, just that it was monumental, and
right.
and it continues. You know,
right.
People are always surprised at how many incest survivors there are in any one group. It was that way then, and it's this way now.
Right.
And as long as patriarchy rules, uninhibited and unchecked, it will continue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Wonderful, thank you. I think Chico Freeman would like to share something with us. And so Chico, please unmute yourself and let us see what you have.
All right.
Live from Switzerland.
Yeah. My name is Chico Freeman. I'm a musician. I'm from Chicago, and I want to thank Marguerite for inviting me. It's the first time. She and I have been knowing each other for a very long time. Also, I want to say hello to Khalid, somewhere out there. This will speak for us. This is my contribution during my time, I was going to say incarcerated, but I mean with the corona.
It feels like that for some people.
Yeah, but anyway, you have to let me share, Theo. I have to be able to share my screen. You have to enable sharing. Ah, there you go. Thank you.
You just can't smile it away. It's much more than passion, it's love. And I've heard some people say they've seen love move mountains. You just can't laugh it away. It's too deep inside your feelings. Oh, it's love, not some game you can play. For a laugh, then go on your way. Let's sit and talk it over and work things out. I love you so. Can we just talk it over and see what we can do? You just can't pass it away like some silly fashion. It's love. It comes eager to stay. It just won't leave you that way. So let's sit and talk it over and work things out. I love you so. Can we just talk it over and see what we can do? Let's sit and talk it over and work things out. I love you so. Can we just talk it over and see what we can do? You just can't pass it away like some silly fashion. It's love. And I've heard some people say they've seen love move mountains. Oh, love. I've heard some people say they've seen love move mountains. Oh, love. I've heard some people say they've seen love move mountains.
Yeah, just smile it away.
That was perfect on so many levels.
Thank you. I thought it was apropos for this to make this offering for your group. I found it very inspiring. Your group.
I needed
it.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
Well,